And let's finish the second chapter of the Darkangel, which is called Vengeance. Speaking of vengeance, Ariel has sworn vengeance on the vampire, also called the Icarus, who took um, her mistress. She has now been captured by that vampire and is in his castle. He is not interested in making her his bride. He's basically told her that she's ugly, and we'll pick up from there. The castle was immense and empty. The vampire led her through room on room of cold gray stone, rooms that contained nothing but an occasional piece of furniture, a carved alabaster couch beside a fine silk tapestry, perhaps, and that was all. The Icarus looked about him with satisfaction. Ariel gazed about her in dismay. "Yes," he said. "They took most of it with them when they left. This used to be a king's palace. Did you know it? But the king's son died young, and his father grew old without an heir. Then I came when he was dying, and the land had no champion to defend it, so the queen took her people far to the east, across the sea of dust, to found a new kingdom. This is my palace now." Ariel followed the Darkangel through the empty rooms and empty halls. "Have you many servants?" she made bold to say at last, for she hardly felt fear of him now, only a vast sense of insignificance. "There is only you," he answered. "I had another tiring maid before you, but she tried to run away. She did not get far across the plain. I caught her by the hair and strangled her, then threw her to my gargoyles. If you try to leave here, I will do the same to you." Ariel nodded. After a time she murmured faintly, "And what is to be my room, my lord?" "Any room," he told her. "Find one that suits you and take it." "And where are your apartments, lord?" she asked. "I have none," he said. "There is only my bedchamber there, and it is locked." He gestured to the right. Through an arched doorway Ariel saw another chamber, at the end of which stood a straight stair leading up to a landing. She caught only a glimpse of an ornately carved door standing shut at the head of the stair. Before, the Icarus turned down a hallway, and Ariel had to hurry to follow. He nodded back over his shoulder toward his chamber door without turning. "I sleep but once a year." He led her down corridors and stairwells, through the lower floors, the washing room, long dry and deserted, the storage rooms, where no supplies were kept, and finally the kitchen of bare shelves where no herbs or onions hung drying from the ceiling beams. "But what shall I eat?" cried Ariel, dismayed. The vampire shrugged. "You must find your own food. The other ones always did. There is a garden. Perhaps you will find something there. I, you may know, sup but once in a 12-month." "On your wedding night," said Ariel. The Darkangel stood, fiddling with the leaden chain about his neck. "I have shown you enough of the castle," he announced suddenly. "Now you must meet my wives." He led her up a winding stair, down a long narrow hall, to a little door at the very end. It opened onto a tiny windowless room, in which were 12 emaciated women. Some stood in corners or crouched, leaning back against the walls. Some crawled slowly on hands and knees. One sat and tore her hair and sobbed. Another paced along a little of the far wall. All screamed and cowered at the entrance of the vampire. "Yes, they are a sight," he said to Ariel. "Though they were all beautiful when I married them, I do not think the climate here agrees with them." "Wives," he said, "this is your new servant. Do not encourage her to run away, or I shall have to kill her as I did the last." The women looked at Ariel with caverns where their eyes should have been. Their starved cheeks were translucent in the lamplight. The skin of their faces pulled so tight Ariel could see the imprint of their teeth through their lips. Their arms looked like birds' legs, skin and bone, with no flesh in between. They cringed, they trembled. One of them moaned. Her voice was hollow. Their hair was all coarse and dry and blighted marsh was all coarse and dry as blighted marsh grass. "These are wraiths and not women," Ariel thought suddenly. "The soulless and undying dead." "You must spin for them," the vampire was saying, "and weave. Nothing heavy, you understand. They are very fragile. Wool or even silk weighs them down, so they cannot walk, but must crawl about the floor like crippled beggars. I do not come to view them often, but when I do, I expect them to appear presentable." "Not wool or silk," said Ariel, watching the wraiths. "Then what shall I weave?" "You must find it yourself. Something grows in the garden, perhaps." He half turned away as if to leave. "Which of them is Eodoin?" said Ariel. Her voice had fallen to a whisper as she realized one of these creatures must once have been her friend. The Dark Angel shrugged. "Surely you do not expect me to remember which one is which." He left her standing in the middle of the room. Ariel ran after him a pace or two. "Where are you going, my lord?" she cried. He turned and said impatiently, "What business is that of yours? You are but a servant, and I have spent enough time on you." "But what if I should need to find you?" stammered Ariel. "Why should you need to find me?" said the vampire. "Your duties do not concern me." "But," groped Ariel, "I shall be all alone." "Alone?" cried the Icarus. "You have 12 mistresses in one." Then he turned and strode off down the hall, leaving Ariel in the room with no windows from the wraiths. And that is the end of chapter 2.